Hello everyone. Yesterday, I made a short video after the release of the preliminary report, the investigation into the crash of AI-171. I had concluded that it was a malicious intent by one of the pilots that caused the crash. I still think that's the very likely scenario, but let's take the step back and see if there are other possibilities, however remote they are, and we will double click on them. Okay, so this was a terrible tragedy with AI-171 in which 260 people lost their lives shortly after takeoff from Ahmedabad airport on the way to London. The investigation report reveals that the fuel control switches for both engines were moved from run to cut off just moments before impact, effectively shutting down the engines. This single fact became a focal point of the crash probe. Importantly, back in 2018, the US Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, issued a Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin, or SAIB, about this very component in Boeing 737 aircrafts. The bulletin warned of the potential disengagement of the fuel control switch locking feature. In other words, under certain conditions, the mechanical lock designed to prevent accidental switching could fail. So, investigators are now examining whether such a malfunction could explain why both switches moved to cut off simultaneously, or almost simultaneously. If the lock failed, it's theoretically possible, though extremely unlikely, for an inadvertent movement to shut down both engines in flight immediately after takeoff. Meanwhile, Air India is facing scrutiny for not inspecting or modifying these switches even after the FAA SAIB bulletin. The airline reportedly argued it wasn't a mandatory requirement. While that may be technically true, SAIB are advisory, not directives. It raises a serious question about the safety culture and risk management of Air India. But it's also important to note that many experts see this entire line of investigation as something of a red herring. The chances of both switches being accidentally moved to cut off in a modern cockpit is vanishingly small, even with the lock feature degraded. Investigators will have to consider all possibilities, including human factors, procedural lapses, or deliberate action. Ultimately, this preliminary report points to a troubling detail about the fuel control switches. But it also highlights the need for airlines to take every advisory safety bulletin seriously.